And turn the lights on. How we gonna turn it back on? Back on right away.
All right, guys. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. Solitary Justice Project. I'm going to start with intro. We're going to have to play the video here, the Senator Chang's video, and then we're going to talk a little bit further.
Congratulations to the Solitary Justice Project on having a successful event today. I'm really sorry that I can't be there in person, but I wanted to congratulate you on your event and also just say how much I appreciate working with all of you at Citizens for Prison Reform and a number of other organizations on legislation to address the issue of solitary confinement in Michigan prisons. Having heard some of the really horrific stories of people who have been negatively impacted or even died in solitary confinement, I'm really committed to continuing the work on this important legislation to restrict who can be in solitary confinement, to ensure that there are adequate checks in place on mental health and physical health, and also making sure that we're not limiting access to essential things. So thank you all so much for attending the event today. Please keep raising your voices, keep sharing your stories. Just know that you have a partner in me and others in the legislature who really are committed to making sure that this work gets done to address this issue of solitary confinement.
Thank you and welcome again. If we can get the lights on now, we're good with the video. So my name is Justin Counts. I'm the executive director of Jackson Strength Network. I started Jackson Strength Network as a boots on the ground grassroots organization to help our people formerly reincarcerated back into community. We call them returning neighbors because we know these are people that are coming back to live in our community again. And we want to change the rhetoric and we want to help be a support to people. I first found out about this campaign, Open My Door campaign, last year. And it meant a lot to me and I wanted to be a part of it simply because I know what it's like to be in this cell. I spent most of my adult life in and out of cells just like this. And it wasn't until that I started to hear the stories from people that have been impacted from living in a cell just like me that I started to realize and started to make a connection on the harm that it was causing. So there's many things that I'm still affected by in my personal life today from being inside this cell. Many memories, many traumatic experiences, things that you can never forget that I've experienced from being in those cells. And as a person who's been conditioned to being in one of those cells most of my adult life, I know the feeling of getting used to being in this environment and what it does to our mindset and our mental. So we welcome you guys today. I appreciate you guys for coming out. Please listen to all of the stories, listen to all of the experiences that people have been through. Check out the exhibit, the solitary confinement cell. This is here for one day only, but it's a wonderful exhibit because it actually shows you the reality that many men and women face every single day, from the steel cold toilet seat. I remember the first thing that I rapped about when I was free was I get to sit on my porcelain toilet, right? My porcelain toilet, because I developed a fear of germs from having to use that every single day, having to brush my teeth with the same toilet that I use to use the bathroom right there where I brush my teeth, not having access to fresh water. Where I have to get water from this dirty little faucet. This faucet actually looks 100 times better than what they do in actual reality. In actual reality, we wouldn't give our dogs the water that comes from these type of faucets. And these are faucets that we have to rely on for our drinking because we don't get anything else to drink while we're in these cells. So these are the things that we're hoping that we can help you learn from. These stories, look at the many men and women who have lost their lives while inside one of these cells that look similar to this. You'll see stories of people getting their water cut off and them passing away from dehydration. You see, people are getting no medical attention because we know that there aren't medical experts inside of prisons. So we see many stories of people that are no longer with us because staff just wasn't able to treat them or didn't have the care to treat them. So these are the things that we want to change. Thank you for joining us tonight. Next up, I'm going to introduce Hakeem Crampton with the Open My Door campaign and the Solitary Justice Project.
Thank you once again, everybody, for joining us today. I really appreciate this opportunity to really be in Jackson, Michigan with this message. Before I even start, really, I want to dig right in deep and really get to the highlight of what this is really all about. Because when we think of solitary confinement, we think of people who are in prison, who are violent, who need to be isolated, right? But let me put this in real perspective. On this piece of document I have in front of me is my face card from prison. And it has listed with it my assignments, meaning that the rooms that I would be transferred to. Between 1993 and 98, because in 92 I was in the what's called reception, guidance and reception, right, in Wisconsin. And they didn't start tracking it until 1993. So between 93 and 98, I had over 33 room assignments. 13 of them were due to solitary confinement. So that's roughly a little less than half of my movement in and out of the correctional system was because of solitary confinement. But why is somebody in solitary confinement to begin with? That's an issue that's not really addressed because we're at the forefront really talking about the real crisis of isolation and the traumatic impact of segregation and what it does to people. But what we haven't addressed really is why is it that when people go to prison, sometimes it's our loved ones, it's our children, it's our spouse, it's a sibling that may end up finding themselves in prison. And when they find themselves in prison, why is it? Have we ever asked this question? Why is it that when someone goes to prison, they have to fight for their survival in prison? And why is that an important question? Because really the conditions of confinement inside our correctional institutions, when we find people isolated in solitary confinement cells like this, it's because they walk into a prison environment that they're not even safe within. They walk into a prison environment that is animalistic in nature. They walk into a prison environment that they have to fight to survive in. And so oftentimes that fighting for survival may mean that they may have to get into a fight. It may mean that they may have to stab somebody. And you hear what I said? It may mean that they may have to. Inside a prison system, one of us could be conditioned to be forced because of the living environment to fight for our survival. We may have to use a knife to defend ourselves inside prison, to survive, to make it the next day. I know the harsh reality of this firsthand because in 1985, my uncle, Wesley Doris Murray, was killed in Ken Ross Correctional Facility 6 months before his release. Devastated my grandmother, her baby, her child, her youngest son, who went to prison for robbing the Comerica Bank right down the street from here, right on Addison and Francis. He got sentenced to 10 years, and he robbed the bank, right? He had a chance to come home, and he didn't make it home. It wasn't as though he was the worst person in our community. It wasn't as though he was some type of throwaway somebody they try to deem us all to be when people go to prison. But no, he was a young man from our community who made a big mistake. And while he was there, my father used to take me to go visit him. And I used to be sitting on my father's lap and driving his blue truck. It's now in my garage. Sit on his lap and drive the classic truck to go see my uncle. And I remember my uncle coming on the visit, talking to me positively, inspiring me and motivating me to such an extent that when I went to prison, they asked me, "What's your religion?" I had no idea in the world what my religion was. I didn't have a religion. But I remembered my uncle in prison when I used to go visit him when I was 6 and 7 and 8 years old and 10 years old. And he used to tell me, "You a Muslim?" I didn't know what that was. So when they asked me, "What's your religion?" I said, "Muslim." I had no idea what it was. But that began the door to open up for me to myself. That was the pathway to open up my spirituality and allow me to cope with the reality of being incarcerated. And not only to cope with the reality of being incarcerated, but to ask the important questions. Why in the hell am I here? What am I going to do with the time to why I'm here? Because for those who know my story, I was wrongly incarcerated. I didn't belong in prison for the crime that I was convicted of, although in my mind, poetically justice, you know what? I was out here doing things in the community that was harmful, destructive to our community, to such an extent that people like me go to prison for the things that I was doing in the community. It just so happened I went to prison for something I didn't do. So it allowed me to, that crossroads in my life, to question what is happening here? How did I get in this predicament to where I'm now in prison, but then I'm finding myself oftentimes in a place like this, finding myself quite regularly inside an incarcerated system, right? And so doing the work while inside was important to me to actually ultimately setting the groundwork for coming home and being an advocate for my lived experience of incarceration. So I've been home now 20 years, very long time. And then you would think in 20 years that a person would have gotten beyond the traumatic impact of incarceration, of solitary confinement, of the criminal court system, of the maze of supervision, probation and parole, and all these different things. Some people never get over these things. Oftentimes we never get over them because too often we haven't actually addressed them. We think that because we're doing well enough, we're doing good, we got a job, we re-enter society, we're kind of stable. We haven't really dug deep and examined the psychological impacts of not only incarceration, but a place like solitary confinement. And as I mentioned and showed you on my paperwork, my assignments, I have over 13 different solitary confinement assignments just between 93 and 98. That don't include my last few solitary confinements of administrative seg where I did a whole entire year in Oklahoma prison system, right? So doing the work is critical, but too often we don't do the work. Now we're starting to see the real significant impacts of incarceration and solitary confinement. Why is it important for us to have this conversation in this community? Because as I mentioned, over 90% of people in prison are actually coming home. They're coming back to our neighborhoods. They're coming back to be your neighbor. They're coming back to work in spaces where you go shop at and frequent, right? So the real question is, as a society who built measures of accountability, systems and institutions of accountability, right, where we're holding people accountable for their behavior in society, when we say as a society, well, temporarily you can't be in society. You have to go be locked up for a little while to be rehabilitated, right? If that's the model, if that's the goal to meet justice, right, for the community, then when I come home, 90% of us are coming home, only a small percentage is going to die in prison, right? And some people do, unfortunately. But when I come home, I should be coming home rehabilitated. I should be coming home welcomed by society. Like, we can't wait for you to come home because we know when people like go to prison and we support them the way they're supposed to be supported, we know that they can come home powerful individuals, working in the community to help change the face of community, right? To support the redevelopment of our community, to reestablish safety in our community, because we know what it looks like because we as a part of helping remove safety senses from the community, right? But the people that are coming home, they're finding that when they get to prison, there's nothing in prison conducive to helping them be rehabilitated to come home better than it was when they went in. So the upwards of 90% of people that's coming home, most of us in society, what do? We scared them to come home. We don't want them to come home. We don't know what you're gonna do. We watching you from a distance to see what you're gonna do, to see if you're gonna be positive. But guess what? That shouldn't be the reality of the case, because we've entrusted a system who said, you know what? We haven't come up with a better plan to rehabilitate people. So what we're gonna do instead is we're just gonna warehouse people. And we're gonna put people in rooms and spaces and buildings where they gotta fight for themselves, fend for themselves, where they may have to stab each other. We may be taking some of them up out of here in body bags. Some of them may be psychologically damaged so bad they may jump over tiers and kill themselves, as we consistently see this happening here in Jackson, Michigan, right? So these are the psychological realities that we're not even really addressing as we're at the back end talking about solitary confinement, talking about the legislative work that we're doing to address it. And why are we even addressing solitary confinement? Is there other issues we could be addressing instead of it? Well, like I said, the worst place in prison is the segregated place. It's the isolated place. It's the place where people who so-called can't behave in the general population. They can't follow the rules. So we got to lock them up And what we're saying is that what we're saying is people like us with lived experience, because we've been there. What we're saying is that you haven't created an environment safe enough for me to feel safe enough where I ain't gonna pull this thing and protect my life inside prison. They haven't done that. They haven't created enough programs to support my needs. Instead, I could come and be sent to prison, have a need. It may be a psychological need. It may be a need to address my violent, aggressive behavior. But guess what? Because there's 30-something thousand people in prison and only have enough programming for 4,000 people, I'm on the waiting list. And I may not actually get in my program by the time my time is up. So I may do my 17 years in prison. And at the time I'm about to get released, they're saying, hey, we had 3 programs for you. You never got a chance to get them, but we still got to release you because your time is up. So that means my violent, aggressive behavior for 13, 17 years has never been addressed. I've been in there surviving. I've been in there trying to make it. Food costs so much. Phone costs so much. My people ain't out there supporting me that way. So I'm in here struggling and surviving, selling drugs, stealing and taking, bullying people, doing what I can do to survive. I got tickets up the wazoo. Mentally, psychologically, spiritually, I'm coming home a wreck. I ain't ready to come home to this community. And when I went back to Green Bay Correctional Institution back in like 2013, I told them that. And there was some brothers in there that I was doing time with when I was there. And they was in the same room, and I told them, I said, you know what? I'm going to say something. It's going to hurt a lot of your feelings. I said, as bad as I want y'all to come back out here to the community, where I'm out here in the community enjoying my freedom, as bad as I want you to have what I got, I don't want to see y'all in my community. I don't want to see some of y'all because y'all going to come back to this community and harm our community. I had to tell them that because that's the reality. Right? That's because the system hasn't created programs and pathways for their rehabilitation. Some of us take it upon ourselves, but only a few of us is going to be in that predicament to take it upon ourselves. Not all of us. I had an incentive. Why am I here? See, I had to look at the conviction and say, oh, you're here because you're convicted of this. That wasn't why I was technically there, because I was innocent. You see what I'm saying? But there was a real vision and reality of why I was still there, a real purpose. So I had to discover that. So that's what allowed me to separate myself from the normal prison environment and doing normal prison time and do something different with myself. Not everybody's doing that. The prison system is allowing people like us, organizations like Citizens for Prison Reform, to have access to the institutions so we can introduce our programs. We're getting very limited, scant amount of access, very controlled access. None of our programming is actually penetrating the institutions. So therefore, the rehabilitation opportunities for people who are experiencing solitary confinement, who may need real aggressive therapy, they're not getting it. They're not receiving it. And as a result of that, we understand that we as family members who may have a loved one locked up, we understand that we can't accept someone coming home from this to what we see our loved ones coming home in the conditions some of them are in. This organization was founded roughly over 15 years ago because the founder who was in this room today, her child, her teenage child, 15 years old, my son is 15, was sent to prison. And unfortunately, he had to do what? Go to solitary confinement? Why? Do you really expect a 15-year-old child to go inside an adult prison system and follow some rules? Come on, be realistic. It's not designed for that. It's a dangerous environment for a child to be in. Right? So the psychological effects and damage that was happening to her child motivated her to say, hold on, children are experiencing this. Not only children, but adults even are experiencing this. Created this organization that I work for, Citizens for Prison Reform, whose mission really is highlighting the most devastating impact of solitary confinement, the most devastating impact, I should say, of incarceration. Because the majority of people who go to jail, prison, juvenile custody, they're going to experience some form of isolation for rule violation. But what we haven't asked is, what psychological effect is it really having on them? To have limited human engagement. No access to music, for example, to art, right? No real meaningful engagement to engage your brain while you're isolated from humanity. Remember, the original design was we created a penitentiary system. We put you in a hole and give you a Bible and say, now, return in penance to God, and you'll come up out of the hole, the prison, a better person. That was the design. That's what we thought. That you're a criminal in society, and all you need is God. We throw you the Bible, put you in a hole, and that was it. I mean, that's a You know, you think about it like we all need God, we know that, but is that how we do it? We created a system as a result of that that shows us that's not how you do it. So as a result, we ultimately been fighting for legislative change. Legislation that would introduce a bill as law. Now we know the process, just do a little civic classroom project, right? We know there's three branches of government, right? Who knows the three branches of government? We got kids back there. Y'all know the three branches of civil government? They don't know class and session, right? We got the head person in charge, the executive, right? Like the president of the United States. Or it could be the, for example, the governor of a state, right? Or for example, could be the mayor of a city, right? The executive, right? And then after that, you have the courts, right? The judiciary, who decide what's law, what corresponds to the Constitution and what doesn't. And what's the last branch? The elected who? The elected representatives, the senators, right? Your representatives or your local city council, your county commissions, or right, your local level. So those are the three branches of government. In order to introduce a bill that becomes state law, we have to go through the process. The process looks like this. We start beginning to work on a bill draft, right? Where we have a concept of something that needs to be changed or introduced as law. We start working on that, start drafting that up, then start having discussions on what the bill needs to look like. What are the evaluations, the considerations, right? What are the consequences and who's impacted and all these different things have to be evaluated. What is it going to look like when we roll the bill out? Who's going to implement the law? Who's going to oversee it? All those things are kind of discussed. And in the midst of that, we ultimately build a bill draft that can be introduced as law. So what an elected official does is they introduce it into what's called a committee. They introduce it as a bill and say, I have a bill I want to introduce before this body, this esteemed legislative body. Then it'll be assigned to a committee that governs that area. We work in the judiciary a lot. A lot of the stuff we work in is in the judiciary, the judicial law. So therefore, most of the bills we work on go into the judiciary. So there's a judiciary committee hearing that'll be held in which they'll ask for testimony to hear what are the pros and the cons of this bill, who's for it, who's against it. What are the community saying? It's open to the community to come in and hear it out. Now they've heard all the information needed to hear, they'll vote on it, yay or nay. If they say yes, then it goes to the full floor of everybody, not just the committee of the judiciary, but it goes before all of the elected representatives from that particular branch, right? If they pass it, then it goes to the next house. So if it's introduced into the House of Representatives, then it gets voted out into the Senate. They do the same thing. They hold a hearing, they have us come testify, take testimony, right? And then they vote it out. And then if it makes it all the way through, it goes to who? The executive, right? Who is our executive? The governor. And then the governor is required to sign it into law, or she don't have to. She can leave it to die, as they say, right? So it's a big process. So we've been working on this solitary bill for quite some time. We finally have it to where it's about to be introduced. And as you heard, Senator Tang on the screen just a little while ago, thanking us for the work we're doing, talking about this particular event in specific, because he's just about to introduce this bill, perhaps next week, maybe Monday or Tuesday. We had a big meeting just last week with the DOC. And so there's a lot to discuss about moving this bill forward. There's a second part of this bill, which is important for you all, because it's called a task force bill. The task force bill would be a separate bill than the solitary bill itself. Now, solitary bill has a lot of different nuances to it, but the task force bill would allow the legislators to create a task force of representative members from the public, from different areas, entities, institutions, etc. They would then come together and investigate solitary confinement, investigate the conditions, how MDOC practices. What does it look like? What are the rules? Are the rules working? Which ones should be changed and examined, et cetera? So they can then make recommendations back to the legislature and say, hey, this is what we discovered and found out, and this is what we recommend should be changed or introduced as new legislation going forward, right? So that's important, because when that task force stage happens, that's when we're really going to get into a lot more public events. We're going to be educating the public, because we got a lot of people who feel that people belong here. We got a lot of people who say, well, what is their favorite thing? Don't play stupid games, don't get stupid prizes. Yeah. I'm like, okay, all that sounds good until it's your family member that's locked up, and then you fighting to get them out. Now you're the number one advocate on our team, and we're trying to get to you before you have that mindset, before you're in that place where you're like, people in prison belong there. Until you can start examining Okay, somebody might have to go to prison for a couple years. But the question is, if they do, what are we doing in society to build a system that supports them and their return to us, but also simultaneously, right, creates a system that is sustaining a successful condition and reentry, where people are healthy, whole, and healed, and return back better than when they went to prison to begin with. So ultimately, the Open My Door campaign, as it's called, is to open this door. And we close this as a basic prison door, just like anybody else. This mock solitary cell, we show it, and even though it's traumatic in communities, we show it because we need you to understand what this really looks like. We need you to understand that people go into rooms like this. Some of them don't come out. Some of you that were in here earlier watching the Sabri Alexandria story. Young woman went into prison with just a month to serve and didn't come home. She didn't make it home. She had a seizure in prison. No one came to check on her in adequate time while she was in solitary, and she died. You know what I mean? It wasn't like she was there for the rest of her life. She was gonna come home anyway, but she didn't make it home. So what type of systems are we creating where people aren't making it home? Well, my uncle didn't make it home. Is that the price that people should pay for bank robbery? They should be killed in prison? Is that the price people should pay, for getting in a fight in society and they hit somebody, they fall, they hit their head, they got a manslaughter charge? Should that be the price they pay to die in prison? Moses hit a man and he fell and he died. And it was an accident in defense of another human life. Should he have been condemned to die in prison or be sent to prison and isolated like they did people? We have to start really examining the impact, the psychological impact of that. So the Open My Door campaign is really, really focused on not only just the impact of solitary confinement, really, but we have people that are in prison that don't even have access to visitation. So their doors need to be open too, to come see their loved ones. See, we're introducing a bill also that will make it a right if you're incarcerated to see your loved one, or for your loved one to see you. See, a lot of us, our experience with the prison system is 10 years ago, we used to all go visit our family members whenever we wanted. You know what I mean? Just about. Well, since COVID, they changed that. And guess what? Most prisons don't want you to come back up there and visit them. Most prisons don't want to run a visiting room no more. So most prisons don't. Right here in MDOC, Michigan Department of Corrections. So there's people who are fighting with the system to see their loved ones. They make it extraordinarily difficult for that process to take place. And guess why? There's no legislation, there's no law that would tell the Michigan Department of Corrections, someone you have in prison, they have to be seen by a loved one should they desire to. And that they should have the right to see somebody, like a clergy, should they desire to. But right now, the MDOC, the policies are set up in such a way, because we don't have any legislation to govern it, the policies are set up in such a way where they can make decisions arbitrarily whenever they want. One prison could say, okay, yeah, you can come on this day, you can come visit. You go to another prison, 2 months later, you get transferred, and they're saying, oh, you can't come. You have to go through a different process. It's a different protocol. People making different rules. So this is just some of the work, the legislative work this organization is doing that's brought you this mock solitary cell. Our partnership is with Solitary Justice Project. Leon Benson, Justin Counts, Joey Oliver that is in Jackson, and some other folks around the state. They're all joined the Solitary Justice Project to share their solitary stories as survivors. Because remember, some people don't come home from this. So if you do go to prison and you experience this and you come home, you're a solitary survivor. Because the odds, listen to this, the chances of someone who goes to prison and experience solitary confinement, their risk of suicide is drastically increased by 2/3. Their chance of overdosing within a year is upwards of 70% of people coming home from prison. 7 out of 10 people who have substance use disorder problem while they're in prison experience solitary confinement within a year they're committing suicide. So if you made it, you experienced solitary, and you still here with us, you a survivor. Right? People are surviving this condition. That's what we're saying. We're not raising the alarm enough about it because we don't understand the real psychological impact, the long-term impact that it's had on our community. Some of us have no idea why people that we know and love went to prison and come home and can't cope. Some of us have no idea that they experienced solitary confinement, where they was isolated, tied. Some people hog-tied. You don't even understand what happens in these places. Fed cellulose, put on restrictions. Somebody come and flood the whole institution because they have the psychological challenges. And so they punish everybody now because water done went through the whole cell block. Now everybody punished. We ain't bringing y'all no food. We're going to give y'all all cellulose. All kind of things happen inside prisons that we don't even realize the extent and depth of it. So our Solitary Justice Project coordinator, Leon Vince, was supposed to be here to kind of talk about the work toward healing, the post-incarceration work that we're doing also, focusing on solitary survivors, getting the help that people need, getting the therapy, the treatment, focusing on overcoming and confronting the challenges that solitary confinement has in our lives. And so in spite of Leon not being here, he was going to tell you about all that work he's doing. I'm going to introduce you to Miss Damara West, who is a clinical psychologist in our community, therapist, I say, working in our community, doing phenomenal work, has her own story related to the impacts of incarceration. So I'm going to introduce Ms. Damara West. We're going to talk about really our path toward recovery. How do we heal from this in spite of the work we're going to be doing at the legislative level to change the policies and practices so we're not having to address the post-incarceration healing part of it. But in the meantime, we still have to. So I want to introduce Ms. Damara West. Thank you for coming, Damara.
From Detroit, and I've known Hakeem for the last couple of years and really respect the work that he's been doing. And I'll tell you, this is the first time that I've heard about this work, and I can't wait to share it everywhere. So again, my name is Damara West. I've been a therapist for the last 16 years. I am someone that is personally impacted. My brother has been in the Michigan prison system for the last several years, doing a very hefty sentence. And we have seen him in 3 different facilities, and all 3 of them operate differently in a myriad of ways. And our family is still adjusting to all of the things that come along. And he's one of the fortunate ones, because we make sure there's money on his books. We make sure there's somebody that goes to visit him. There's somebody that's messaging him. But he, too, is someone that spent time in solitary confinement. And he spent time in solitary confinement in part because they were trying to protect him from certain rivalries that were taking place within the prison. And so, although, of course, solitary confinement is not the way to go, and if you haven't actually walked in, if you have never seen a cell, if you have not been personally impacted and heard stories, then you got to listen to these stories, because it is horrifying in many ways what we see behind closed doors. And what I know for sure, that as a licensed therapist, as a holistic practitioner, and when I say holistic practitioner, I'm trauma responsive trained, I'm a yoga teacher, a meditation teacher, a breathwork teacher. All of these practices helped to save my life. I didn't know these practices were saving my life, but all of these practices saved my life. And all these practices are things that are continuing to save my life. And so when I talk about, mental health challenges, and particularly around trauma, people, depending on how deep the wound is, may be healing from that wound across their lifespan. If they end up walking into a solitary confinement space, what do you think is going to happen to somebody who's already struggling with mental health? What do you think the percentage is of people behind prison bars? How many of those people do you think have been impacted by trauma? At least 92% of people that are incarcerated didn't get the support they needed, in part because we oftentimes don't call things what they are, because we don't know what they are necessarily. We skate over pain as if it doesn't matter. And if you're a young person that's endured all kinds of hardship, including witnessing community-based trauma, including just witnessing, including having a parent that you are witnessing being abused, right? A caregiver. All of these things are deeply traumatic. And so as Hakeem talked about, right, if someone becomes incarcerated and they end up in solitary confinement, where do you think the majority of suicides happen in prison? They happen as a result of solitary confinement. And in fact, about 50% of all suicides that take place within prisons is as a result of solitary confinement. So if 92% of people that end up incarcerated, don't get the mental health support that they need. And then on top of that, they end up in a cell 20 hours a day with no ability to communicate with the outside world. When my brother was in solitary confinement, we could not talk to him. There were no phone calls. There was no messaging through the app that I used to communicate with him on a fairly regular basis. There were no visits. So for days on end, he was spending 20 to 22 hours a day in the name of them protecting him. I need y'all to hear this. And so we've got to find better solutions. This is one of the solutions that avails us, because even if someone needs to be protected, they should have access to mental health support. They should have the ability to communicate with someone from the outside world. Any one of us can attest to the torture that sometimes we feel, and we just got to get out the house because we can't be in isolation anymore. Anybody felt that? Most people feel that. Most people that are on a normal range, because I believe that all of us are on the range when it comes to psychological challenges. I want to say this, right? It's not a matter if people are suffering. It's a matter of how much are they suffering and where do they actually fall on the continuum. So for someone like me and someone like my brother, who has 8 out of 10 adverse childhood experiences based on the baseline, I know that it could have been me. It could have been me. And part of our work is about humanizing the experiences so that we see, in part, we can lock people in a cell for 20 to 22 hours with no outside contact. Why? Because we don't really see these people as fully human. That's the part that nobody's actually saying. Because if we did, there would be no way in hell, excuse me, babies, that we would ever think that this was okay. We would never think this was okay. But the problem is that we don't see ourselves in the people that have been deeply affected until it's one of us. Until it's one of us. Or, we've been trained to be in spaces because we've heard lots of stories. Even when we hear stories and we're observing people, we don't actually know what it's like until we've had an experience. But we still have to hear the stories, because the stories help to humanize people's experiences. One of my life's work is to make sure that every single person on the planet, and particularly the people that have the most need for support, which includes systems impacted people, considering that 92% at a minimum end up in prison. There is so much talent behind prison doors. If you've ever seen the Carceral Project and you saw the art, I have been witnessing art across my lifespan. I have never seen some of the most brilliant works of art. Talent that we will never get to witness in part. Right? And so, yes, we're talking about the system of incarceration, and we're talking specifically about the system of having people in solitary confinement, right? We're not even talking about prevention. That's a whole nother thing that we need to be talking about, right? How do we prevent people from being locked up to begin with? But in the meantime, for the masses of people that are behind closed doors, I'm just going to say closed doors, because I'm believing those doors are going to open, right, for the majority of people. We have to make sure that people have adequate access to mental health support. And oftentimes, it's not the therapist inside that can actually do really good work, y'all. Because most inmates, most people who are incarcerated are deathly afraid of even sharing their innermost dark truths. So even when you have mental health support within the confines of a prison system, oftentimes people are still not getting the help that they need. Because what I know to be true as a therapist is that the efficacy of my work is rooted in part in the relationship that I have with the people that I am privileged to serve. It's sacred work. It's sacred work. So if a person can't trust me, I can't work with them. So even if you're lucky enough to have a full-time therapist that's accessible, that's kind, that's all of the things that we're trained to do as therapists, you are still going to be limited in terms of what you can do. And this is why I believe that a lot of the support that we need from a mental health standpoint has to be from the outside in when it comes to mental health. Because if not, people will never get to a space of healing. They will just do what they need to do to survive. And they may try still to get this help. But they will know quickly that this help is actually not really availed to them. This is not the space that they can go to get the support that they need. So what typically happens is that there's already a splitting that happens when people go to prison. And then there's more splitting that happens in part because people are not getting the help that they need. And then if they're in solitary confinement and if they survive it, oh, wow, they are an anomaly. They are an anomaly. So there's so much more that I could say. Ultimately, please tell everyone you know about this bill. Educate people, use your social media platforms for it. I have an e-news that reaches about 3,500 people now that I have a podcast that has an active listenership. Use the influence that you have to create change where we want to see change, right? And in part, that's why we're all here, because we believe in this and we want to see change and respect to it. And on that note, Ashe. Any questions, comments? Any questions, comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. My honor and my privilege. Real talk. All right. If you have any questions, I'll be here and available for all of it. Thank you.
All right, next up from the Solitary Justice Project, we got Mr. Leon Benson.
Hey, first of all, I want to apologize to y'all. I was a little late, got caught up in traffic, driving here from Detroit. But I want you guys to know that this is near and dear to my heart. I am a solitary survivor. Spent 25 years in prison in Indiana, 12 years of which in solitary confinement, consecutive.
Oh.
Right? And on top of that, I was innocent. I'm an exoneree. So much like the good doctor was talking about, it is something about walking up out that place. That's a victory, right? That's a victory. But it's more to it than that. As the things I know that's being conveyed, because we got a great team of people that really care about this subject. The key thing is, the hope that's involved in it for our people that's still inside. It's a hope that is broken in there. They said that you can survive 4 months without water, 4 days without food, 4 minutes without air. But the second someone loses hope, it's over with. And I'm here to tell you, I got the real stories and experiences of men and women, men mostly, that I know personally lost hope while being in this tomb. A tomb, they lost hope and they come out broken. And when that hope is lost, that means it's a mental challenge. That's what we're dealing with, a mental challenge. If mass incarceration was much like GM, if 65% of people recidivate, what would that look like for GM if 65% of their cars are defects? We won't have a GM. But we continually invest in a system that's crippling us more than it's helping us. Why I say us? Just like the good doctor said, sorry that I came a little late on your presentation, but I caught some good stuff. She's on point. And I see the passion in her. Much like she said, 95% of these people will be out in the community, broken. And once people get out, not only from the solitary confinement, a very intense thing, but just confinement, period. There are not the resources. No resources are out here for real to catch that. And oftentimes, just like one of our Solitary Justice Project members, Joel Carter. Joel Carter spent 24 years in prison, 17 of which in solitary confinement. And he had MS. He was disabled. They held him there for 17 years and then put what we call the liquid straitjacket upon him with psychotropic drugs and things like that. And he acted out in an OCD fashion because he was going off the drugs. So the minute that he got out, he fought. I give him credit. He fought and he is fighting for his dignity for what happened to him. And the minute that he did, he's being stigmatized, right? Not only there, but in his job, stigmatized. He only been out about a year and a half. And we see the effects. I work with him and I work with the other members too as well. And some of this thing is it's very near and dear to the heart because it takes a level of empathy and compassion. That don't mean you got to live in there with me. You don't have to go through there and do that. Let me tell you that. I ain't finna own this trauma. Man, my trauma, that's what people do because it's been some trauma awards given out to people. Here go a medal. Just tell me your story. How bad did you hurt? Was you hurting really bad? Dang, you hurt bad. No, it's about how can we heal. And that empathy part definitely translates into therapy and things like that. Right now, I am a clinical peer support specialist, so I see many people, white, black, Latino, returning citizens, homeless, people with cardiac problems, people with serious mental challenges. And every time I step to it, I got to take my hat off of all this stuff that I've been through and focus on them. But this is the type of support that we need. I'm going away from peer work, human work. This is a human issue.
Yes.
Human work.
Yes. Yes.
We need to be human, right? When I look out here in this audience, I see me. Everybody in here that I see myself in you. I see me. But the problem is society stigmatizes a lot. The very thing, even though I'm an exoneree and I walk out and I'm victorious, I do great things. The minute somebody don't like me, you know he was in prison, he was in solitary, you know how they move. That's a scapegoat. But this is the arena that we live in this society where things are thrown around like that. And what we want to do with Solitary Justice Project, first we want to stop this stigma and help the people that's coming out to get the real help that they need to eliminate all this post-incarceration syndrome and the symptoms and give them a chance to heal and allow them to step up to the plate and fight the very system that oppressed them. Now, there is some truth to this. Sometimes the people closest to the problem, but let's say most times, are the ones that can best solve them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that don't mean that everybody that was close to it is an expert. But I need people like Miss West, like Doctor. I'm like, hey, so I'm out here. I'm doing what I can do, but I need a little bit of expert help on this part. This part I'm gonna tell you about, and we're gonna come together, right? And that's what we got to do because in recovery, somebody that's recovering from drug substance use disorder, it said that they affect 7 people. 7 people. How many people do you think one person affects that's incarcerated? One person. So, guesstimation, just throwing some statistics out. 2.1 million people. Let's just say 2 million people who are incarcerated. So, At least I'm gonna give it a good number. I'm gonna stream it down. They at least got 5 people in their life that know of them. So that means that 10 million people are affected. But then when you take that number and you look at the people who are out, the ex-felons, the people that been out 20 years, now we got a societal problem. So it's not a prison impacted thing, it's a societal impacted thing because it's everywhere, it's prevalent. It's like water. So the key thing here, what we want to do is bring that empathy. We want to hear those stories. We want to let the families know that you are equally important and affected by what happened in this closet. This is a nasty closet. And people leave out of there with some nasty things. And so I want to thank each and every one of you for showing up here and having the courage to show your face and having the willpower to put divine action behind what you're doing. Just by you showing, that gave me energy. I almost gave it up. Like, man, I'm on the town. I don't know if I can get there. But when I come here, man, my chest is filled with so much wind. My chest is filled with wind, seeing you. I remember you because you are me. And one of our biggest philosophies that we use, and we talk about it in the bill, the Mandela rule. But when you think about Nelson Mandela, when he walked through the prisons of South Africa for 27 years for a crime he didn't commit, he had the Bantu philosophy. I am because we are. So I want y'all to say it with me. When I say I am, you say we are. I am.
We are.
I am.
We are.
And that's what it's all about. Hey, thank y'all for coming out.
Thank you. Thank you. Give him another round of applause. Everybody. Before I go, I just want to leave y'all with this. One of the things that Hakeem said earlier, and Brother Leon mentioned it too, is the mindset of our people in society today. Just even advertising this event, I saw the comments. You know, this is what happens when you mess around and find out, right? But the reason why we have to change this mindset is simply because we cannot say that we love God and we follow God if we don't follow his basic principles. I was sitting in this cell 12 years ago. I'll never forget. I was sitting in quarantine, just getting to prison. And I remember the sound of them locking that gate on me. And I remember feeling the loneliest I've ever felt in my whole life. And in that moment, I fell to my knees on a dirty floor, not worried about Mercer and none of that. And I asked God to save me. And this is the reason why I'm here today. Because God don't do nothing for free. He's like, I'm going to use you. I'm going to use you. I didn't know what it was, but I just knew he was going to use me. So as I sit here and I listen to the stories of other brothers and sisters, what makes me sad is they never get a chance to get that opportunity that I was given, that opportunity for redemption. When we commit crimes, right? We have to deal with that. We're punished not only by society, but we have to deal with God as well. But when you cut off a person's access to the redemption that God gave all of us, right? If we believe, we know that he sent someone to give us redemption, to help lift us back up so that we can become a new person. But if we are hindering people from becoming the person that they're supposed to be, if you're stopping me from growing, if you're stopping me from having that access to resources, in prison, I was able to change my life on my own, not through programming from MDOC. It was because I had access to the library where I can get 7 books a week, and I was able to read a full book every single day. I had that access. But if I'm in a solitary cell, I don't get no books. I don't get no Bible. So now I'm cut off from any tools or resources that I have to save my life. I'm cut off from them. That's why we have to change this. Because if we say that we are a society that forgives, right? If we say that we are a society that forgives, then we have to allow God in to do his work and not hinder him. Stopping people from having access to change is terrible. And if we are a society that says that we follow him and that we have true love, we will see every single one of us as ourselves. We are all brothers and sisters in the same mission, right? But we got to allow God to have his chance. If we destroying people before they even get their chance, let me tell you, it takes about, I've done quite a bit of time in solitary confinement, many different cells. Let me tell you, it takes about 30 to 45 days before you start to speak to yourself. Literally, not even that long. Those bricks on the walls in here, I want y'all all, please, to come inside and take a look at these cells. The bricks that were in the cells, literally, after 30 days, you can start seeing shapes and Michael Jackson and characters. And I had whole orchestras and rap battles going on in my cell within day 45, literally, because you're in an isolated environment where you have nothing, no one to talk to, no priest, nobody. It's just you and your thoughts. This is why the suicide rates are so high. And then I'm going to leave you with this. I've been out of prison for 11 years now, right? Last year I found out that I've been diagnosed with adult ADHD. So my whole life I've been asked, what the hell is wrong with you? And now I know why. This was a nightmare for me. Having ADHD and being stuck in a cell where I can only take 4 to 5 steps in any given direction. This is why this was a nightmare for me. Being stuck here without anything to turn my mind off. A lot of the times I would end up just sleeping my time away because that was the only time that I can escape anything, because I couldn't even escape my own mind because my mind never turns off. So to be in that environment, I understand why someone wants to end everything, because you want to just turn it off. And if I'm in there for 17 years, 12 years, 24 years, I don't know how if I could have made that. And I'm thankful God didn't have to drag me through that. Because me with ADHD, I would have probably checked out myself. So I can understand that. And this is why we have to fight it. Because yes, most of the men and women in prison are traumatized people. People that never got the services that they need. As a case manager, I'm out in the field with people that are homeless. And the story is always the same. They're coming back from prisons. They're coming back from wars. They're coming back from all of these different things that have caused trauma on them. And when they get back to society, we throw them away because we say, it doesn't matter. Get over it. At Community Action Agency, I remember I had to go to my boss one day and say, "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but I can't really sit in my office like that because you have 4 walls and there's no window in here. And it's starting to close in on me." It took for me to have a boss with understanding, knowing my situation, to say, "Don't worry about it. You don't never got to be confined to that office. You know, you're free to go everywhere you want." So I had that freedom. But had I worked for an agency that didn't care about me or didn't even think about none of that stuff, I wouldn't last long in that job. Because for me, sitting inside those 4 little walls, it reminds me too much of this. And that's trauma that lasts forever. That lasts forever. Even 11 years after incarceration, still the same. I step inside here, my heart starts racing. Just the feeling and the memories of being in there. Just imagine. Go home tonight, put yourself in your closet, and close the door in your closet. No TV, no phone, no Wi-Fi, no books, no nothing. Just sit in there and see how long it takes before you run up out of there. For me, I've been conditioned for solitary. So for me, that closet now has become my home. Last, check out the sale, please, but also support Dr. West and her books. She has books for sale. She's got wonderful messages, and I think it's a lot that we can learn from her. So please support that and make sure you come check out the exhibit. There's a book inside here I would love y'all to look at. It's got real pictures so you could kind of get a better understanding of what we're talking about. People being strapped down to beds for long periods of time, people dehydrated, not giving water, because things that we think are the basic rights and privileges in prison don't become basic rights and privileges. You don't have a right to a shower in prison. We go days without a shower. You can't brush your teeth for months. So, and then think about the after effects of that. If you've done 17 years in solitary confinement, where a system where they can tell you if you can have a shower, if you can brush your teeth, most of the time that's not available. They're not going to let you do it. So you get accustomed to not brushing your teeth, to not washing up. It's regular. And then the brother comes home, and then we ostracize him because he don't jump in the shower every day. The brother comes home and he has terrible hygiene, he has terrible teeth, and he has to go get dentist work. That's going to cost all this money because he's been in a situation where those things weren't a given. Those things weren't a given. And to see men and women that have died just because they weren't given water, that brings in the full picture of what we're dealing with here. So please, thank you for coming up tonight.
Really quickly,
Yes.
I just want to say something. So, two things. The reason why I wrote my latest book is because isolation is actually considered a public health crisis. So I want us to think about that. Isolation in general is a public health crisis in general. And let me tell you why. As my brother right here shared, right, the hallucination, things of that nature, this is not like an anomaly. This is the normal psychological effects that begins to happen because we are not wired to be alone. We're not wired to be alone. And on top of that, we're not wired to be alone in the dark. We're not wired to not have any contact with the outside world. And so I want to share a couple things. A growing body of research has found that solitary confinement not only further exacerbates the symptoms of mental illness in individuals already diagnosed, new mental health conditions happen for people that when they came in, there was no diagnosis at all. So it's going to make somebody worse, and somebody's definitely going to get mental health issues once they spend some time in solitary confinement. Prolonged isolation can exacerbate feelings of loneliness, hopelessness, and despair. Many individuals report experiencing heightened anxiety, panic attacks, and symptoms of clinical depression. Numerous studies also show that people that spend too much time in solitary confinement, visual and auditory hallucinations, hypersensitivity to noise and touch, insomnia and paranoia, uncontrollable feelings of rage and fear, distortions of time and perception, increased risk of suicide, as we already talked about, and post-traumatic stress disorder. People who experience solitary confinement are more likely to develop every single major clinical diagnosis that exists, y'all. And so this is why when I'm in spaces, one of the things that I always lead with is not just that I'm a therapist, not that I'm just a holistic practitioner, but I am a survivor. This is what the face of survivor looks like. Why do I do this? To humanize people's experiences. And what's so fascinating to me, no matter what I say in my bio, I could talk about all these amazing things that I've done in my career, whatever that means. The moment that I say survivor, people latch onto it. Why? Because people don't expect me to be the face of a survivor. So part of our work is hardcore about getting this, all the signatures that we need, getting this passed, but we know that there are multiple layers to this. And one of the biggest things that we can do is we can change the perception that people have of what trauma looks like. The school to prison pipeline is real, y'all. It is real. So people behind closed doors, behind prison bars. I just heard a story about somebody at the age of 14 never learned how to read. How is this possible? Because we are building prisons in part based on the illiteracy rate that exists in our respective communities. So for us to say these things don't actually connect, everything connects. Behavior is not something that just happens. So one of the things that we ask oftentimes is not what is wrong with someone, what actually happened to them. Because a lot of the behaviors that we see, and unless you are a psychopath, and I would even say that if you are a psychopath, if you are schizophrenic, in fact, I believe that every single mental health condition that exists is actually rooted in trauma.
Mm-hmm.
I believe all of it. And this is why we don't understand and clairvoyancy also. If you have to sit with your thoughts and you can't process your thoughts, you don't know what to decipher through, you're probably going to become schizophrenic. Because there is no safe haven for you to put this stuff. So I want to just give us an opportunity to do the hard and fast work, like making sure that this gets passed, but also everywhere we go, normalizing even our own experiences, not bypassing them, having the courage to say, me too. That's why I named my first book, Me Too. Because from a therapist perspective, people put you on a pedestal as if you are hyperhuman, superhuman, which is one of the biggest fallacies that exists, considering that 70% of people that end up in the helping profession are people that come from their own trauma. These are also people that haven't done their own work to heal. Okay? So I want to leave us, and I want to get your question, Queen, with a quote. And I'm so sorry, you said so many beautiful things, and I wanted to make sure I could touch it home with research. Both of my brothers did. None of us can be truly human in isolation. None of us can be truly human in isolation. And that's Harold S. Kushner. Thank you so much, y'all, for giving me another opportunity. I just couldn't leave without saying all of that rest good stuff.
Yes, so I'm Lois Polano, Executive Director and founder of Citizens for Prison Reform, which is really the umbrella organization. Solitary Justice Project is working alongside the Open My Door, which is a CPR campaign. And I want to make sure over there on the table, there are flyers for our Legislative Education Day. This is the 15th year in a row that we have put this event on. This year, for the first time ever, we have rented a big tent and we are going to be on the Capitol lawn. We set this cell up and we bring as many elected officials into this space so they can see it and feel it and experience it. We want all of you to come. What we do on this day is we bring as many families as we can from across Michigan to the Capitol. We have fabulous speakers. We have a speaker who is actually, again, it's about her childhood trauma and what she went through, but yet she also understands the importance of not just locking people up, but giving those people the ability to have rehabilitation. So she's going to be speaking. We have legislators that are going to be speaking. You get free lunch. There is no cost to this. You do have to RSVP. So please, if there are not enough of the flyers over there, there is the QR code so you can go and register that way. Would love to see you there. We will keep you informed. We are actually expecting a hearing in the next week or two, and that is on the legislative corrections ombudsman's bills that would actually create more oversight and transparency through our ombudsman. And so if it's something where you want to come to Lansing, you want to be there for that hearing, we will be putting that information out if you signed up with your email. It takes all of us to invest to do this work. There are two facts that I would like to just state. Damara, I think your experience with your brother was with him being in protective custody to protect him. That is actually why he was able to have 2 hours out of his cell. What I'm going to tell you right now is we have a federal agency, Disability Rights Michigan, that can go into the prisons and investigate. And what they reported to us the other day is that up in Baraga, in the furthest prison away, there are many individuals sitting in solitary confinement there who are not getting 1 hour out of their cell. They're not even getting an hour out to the yard in a caged yard. You don't get to go out and be with other people. You're in a caged yard when you go out, when you're in solitary. So I just want to make sure all of you know our goal would be to have people getting out 4 to 8 hours a day and having them in programming. And if they can't do that, creating therapeutic spaces where they can go and have interaction with sensory, and they need something more than just punitive treatment in a cell alone. So I wanted to tell you that fact. And the other fact that I want to share that has really been hitting me, it's been a very emotional couple of weeks for me. I don't know if you all have been listening to the news, but we have had many deaths over the last couple of months, both men and then we've had women recently. And there is a lot going on. There's a big upheaval within the Michigan Department of Corrections. The other day, we sat on this coalition meeting, and the Michigan Department of Corrections administrator joined us for that meeting to give their input and take on the bill. And they're saying it's not workable, it's not doable. They are saying that everyone that walks into this cell has assaultive behavior. That's why they're there. What I'm going to tell you is just what was released in articles through Paul Egan, Detroit Free Press recently. We have women who were threatened that they were going to be put into solitary confinement if they did not come out and clean and scrub the prison through the night, losing their sleep because elected officials were coming in. We see this time and time again where people are threatened with solitary confinement if they do not do something. They were not assaultive. They are not always assaultive. That is not the truth. And I just want you to know that we will speak the truth. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming out. I really, really appreciate it. It means a lot.
We have one question.
Yes, as a survivor of solitary confinement as a woman, I can relate to that. But what do you do for, because see, I was blessed this last time. So I did over 10 years. When I came out the last time, I was blessed that I met a good man and he turned my life around. I'm just gonna keep it real. Him and God turned me around. So I thank God that I had support out here. But I still have a lot of trauma when it comes to places like that. Holes. He'll tell you, they always say, you don't let that be still. You don't sit down. Sit down somewhere. When I'm sitting still, I get anxiety. He'll tell you I won't sleep. I'll be up all night. And hearing this made me just think of how bad it really is. But I've never addressed that. It's real. And then seeing in the news about the young lady with the face distorted, if you know to see my face, when I was incarcerated, I caught Bell's palsy, sarcoidosis. And they didn't get me to the hospital 3 days later. I hate taking pictures to this day, and I'm a photographer. I hate taking pictures to this day because of that. I know the trauma of what people go through not getting proper health care. They don't care. They say we're nobody, we're nothing. But he stuck me in that solitary for 30 days. Like my son, that's my son right there, y'all. But like he said, you start dreaming and thinking. I was this close one day to commit suicide. You know, and I never talked about this to anyone. I never realized that this could be a problem. But I do not like going, when I go to the doctors, I tell the doctor, can you leave the door open? They talking all my business, but leave the door open. Unless somebody's in there with me, I cannot go in the door and be by myself. I cannot sit in my own house alone by myself. If my husband happens to go somewhere and he'll tell you, I can't sit still. I can't be in there.
I know. It's okay if I stand up here. I would love to like be very close to you, but maybe you and I will have some close time. What you're describing is your nervous system hasn't set. And many times what happens for people who are incarcerated and they come out, right, and it's beautiful you have your husband, right, because relationships can help us to heal. We can help to heal ourselves in part as we center self-love, but also what you named is grief. Who you thought you were going to be, right? The 3 days, now you came in this way and now you're leaving in this physical state. So we can't just talk about trauma in isolation. We've got to also talk about the grief that takes place, the people we lose, the ways that we weren't able to engage in society, right? And so oftentimes we're longing for this renewed person, but this is the reality about transformation. Transformation is really about who you were before and what happened, the aftermath of it, and integrating these two worlds. God has served as a beautiful spiritual base for you, but what I'm hearing you say is there's a recognition that there's more work to be done, and work that, if you choose to, can be done across your lifespan. You can get to the point where the door can close. You can get to the point of whatever it is and whatever quality of life that you're looking to have, you can have that. But it's going to mean that you're going to have to enter into doing some therapeutic work with someone. Because that's the work that your husband can't do. And unfortunately, as capable as God is, the reason why therapy exists is in part to do God's healing work. But this is also why I oftentimes talk about, like, people think that all therapists are equipped to deal with trauma. That is the furthest fallacy. We are trained as generalists. Even though we are trained rigorously, 60 credit hours, 600 hours before I graduate, 3,000 hours in the field before I even get fully licensed. And even that doesn't make me an expert when it comes to trauma. I had to get specialized training related to trauma, so that I can make sure that if someone had endured similar experiences, and it's not enough for me to have a peer-to-peer experience, a human-to-human experience, as my brother talked about. That's not enough, because that can't carry people. You can't carry people to a place that you've never been. It's not possible. So I just invite you in to accept what is for now, but also be open to the possibilities that anything that you want for your life is available to you if you choose to enter into the healing space with the right person. What I always say is that therapy works if we work it. If we work it. Now, all therapists are not created equal, and some of us do some real damage, just like any profession. This is why it's so important that just like you should vet your therapist. You should interview people. You should make sure that this person can speak your language, because even cultural responsiveness is important. I always talk about the language of the client. I don't care what my language is. I care what your language is, and meeting you with your language, because your language is going to be the bridge between you and I to be able to do the work that you want to do and transform the way that you want to transform. So everything that you're feeling, it's normal. And you can have a new normal as you choose to. And thank you for giving us the sacred gift of sharing these truths with us, because this is the power. This is the power when we come together in space. Like this epiphany that you had, what a beautiful witnessing. And if you ever want to go on this journey with me, I would be honored. I would be honored to do it with you. Okay. So hopefully I answered your question, a really important one, but I also had to name the grief part because you're grieving too, right? And grief and trauma they're in relationship with one another, but they are distinctly different at the same time. Okay, so I'm going to end right there. I know we want to get on out of here eventually. Okay.
Anybody else have any questions, comments? Anybody want to say something, share a story? All right, guys, thank you for joining us today. Make sure you check out the exhibit.